Hola amigos, Pete here, and today we're going to do a little bit of a weapon review and some weapon analysis of the P90 PDW. Now before we get started, some of you will probably be wondering how to unlock this little bad boy. So if you don't want to know, if you don't want any spoilers, because it is related to the single player campaign, how you unlock it, look away now and I'll put that on screen. Okay, you can look again. So, now we know how to unlock it if we didn't know before. So we're going to talk a little bit about this weapon and why I think it's actually a really awesome PDW. And it does bring a lot to the PDW class. Before we can do that, let's get the weapon stats on screen now. So the ADS spread of the P90 is 0.5 when you're stationary, and if you're strafing or moving at all, it will be 0.7. And this differs to almost all the other PDWs. Most PDWs have 0.4 stationary and 0.8 moving. So that means that the P90, the spread or the accuracy of your bullets aren't as accurate as other PDWs if you're stationary, but if you're moving, they are slightly more accurate. And let's face it, most of the time you're moving when you're firing anyway. It shares these stats with the PDWR. Now moving on, the hip-fire spread is very, very tight with the P90. Literally some of the best in the game. It's really, really amazing hip fire of this weapon. It trumps out all the other PDWs again, apart from the PDWR. And let's face it, these weapons are meant for close quarters, so having a good hip fire is very important indeed. Now moving on to the recoil pattern, that's where some of the negatives creep in about this weapon. It is literally, in my opinion, the worst of all the PDWs. The only weapon that comes close is the SR2, which has 0.45 left and 0.45 right. The P90, of course, is 0.5 each way, and it has quite significant vertical recoil at 0.35. But again, it's that side-to-side recoil of this weapon is pretty horrendous. This is illustrated quite well in the bottom left of the screen, where you can see the base recoil pattern of this weapon without any attachments, and you can see it juddering left and right, and that just shows you that with a lot of weapons they'll go up and to the left or up and to the right, and you can counter that quite well, but it's very hard to counter the recoil on this weapon. The rate of fire is a really, really nice 900 rounds per minute. A quick reload of 2.4 seconds, so that means you've got some bullets left in the magazine. The long reload is 3.45, a muzzle velocity of 460 meters per second, and of course that big magazine size of 51. So how does this stack up against the other weapons? Well, the velocity, the muzzle velocity, is actually some of the highest, just behind the CBJ MS. It's really up there with the top of the PDW class when it comes to muzzle velocity. Then again, muzzle velocity is one of those things that plays a part with ranged combat, and you will not be doing any decent ranged combat with this weapon. You literally want to be in people's faces all the time. The quick reload and the long reload are okay. They are on the high side, but then again, a lot of the PDWs are around the 2.5 second mark when you think about weapons like the PDWR, the MP7, the MX4. They're all up around that high mark, so it's not really that unusual for a PDW to have that. I think the thing with these stats that really makes it stand out is the magazine size. It's incredible. What you'll tend to find with some of the other high fire rate PDWs, and I'm thinking particularly of the CZ3A1, it has 1000 RPM, but of course it only has a 31 round magazine. So with that, you can easily get through, you can melt someone with that. Let's face it, the CZ3A1, you can melt one person easy. You can melt two people, but you get through those rounds so quickly. It's hard to control your ammo. With the P90, you have that sort of capacity to easily, I think, get through 3, 4, perhaps 5 people in close quarter situations before you have to reload. That is really the biggest thing going for this weapon. The other weapon a bit like that is the JS2. So it's quite similar to the JS2. The slight differences between them, the JS2 has really much nicer horizontal recoil than the P90, although the P90 has more upfront damage. Not a lot, I must admit, but it has 1 extra damage with its max damage at 21 in close quarter situations, dropping off to 11.2 at 60 meters. But as I say, where this weapon really comes into its own is hip firing it and having such a large magazine capacity. You don't get the opportunity with the P90 to put on one of the grip attachments. Of course, you can tell by just looking at the design of this weapon, it doesn't need one and it wasn't designed to have one. With barrel attachments, you can put on all the usual suspects. I think that you would be mad to put on anything other, in my opinion, than the compensator if you want to bring down that horizontal recoil just a little bit. The compensator would make a lot of sense. Otherwise, I quite enjoy running the suppressor on this weapon, just because, as I say, you're in close quarter situations, so just not alerting enemies that you're in behind them and mowing them down, it can help you just to get 1 or 2 extra kills before people get alerted to your presence. Personally, barrel attachment wise, I do use the suppressor, but I wouldn't think it was a bad idea to use the compensator at all if you do want to control some of that recoil. But then again, you don't want to be using this weapon at any range. The 11.2 minimum damage, and that damage does drop off significantly for after 8 meters, really is on the low end. You think about that, you're probably having to put 9 rounds into people at range to kill them. This just isn't the weapon. So the suppressor is something that would play against that. But really and truly, you're not going for that, so I think bung the suppressor on there over the compensator personally. But that is a personal preference thing. So we are now coming towards the end of this weapon review, so I guess it's time to give you my conclusion. I think it's a really, really excellent weapon, and I really do think it brings something special to the PDW class. It's the balance of the rate of fire, the hip fire accuracy, and the amount of rounds. All of those things playing in together just makes this something a little bit different from the other PDWs. I'd suggest putting on the laser sight because of course it's going to improve your hip fire, which is already immense. You will get to the point where a lot of the time you don't actually need to ADS. So what you will find is you will save that time. If you don't have time to ADS, you just save that little bit of time by being able to hip fire. Because you know, when you aim down sights, it does take a period of time, so it just cuts that out of the equation for you. So definitely go and check this weapon out if you haven't already. I hope you enjoy using it, and do give me feedback on what you think about it. But until next time, adios amigos.